Pavel versus Seiko, Nathan.
Pavel versus Seiko is what's coming up. That's where we're at right now. And there we can see the protect and ban phase that's been coming into this one. We're playing Shield Phase Conquest in Grandmasters now, which is the Conquest format of yore, except we've added an additional spot to it where you protect one of your decks so that it cannot be banned away in the matchup. And so for Pavel versus Seiko, we're going to take a look at Seiko Shaman this right now, because as we just heard from Jarla, he thinks this could be the up-and-coming deck from nowhere. And that seems to be what it's been this week. A lot of Shaman has been submit across all of Grandmasters this week.
Yeah, and there is a couple of slightly strange inclusions in here from Seiko. We see Giggling Inventor in there, which is not a card that's ever present. We see a single copy of Earthshot. We see a Hungry Crab thrown in there as well from Seiko. Plague of Murlocs and only a single Mind Control tech. So I would call this a particularly unconventional list as far as the ones that we're seeing in Grandmasters this week.
Yeah, I think Hungry Crab has a double benefit right now, actually. The first one is that you obviously can anticipate some amount of Murloc Paladin coming in this week. With Druids being one of the decks to prey on, I feel like Tip the Scales is in a prime position to take advantage of unsuspecting opponents. Number two is in the mirror match. Sludge Slurper is a very good card, and Hungry Crab will activate a battle cry, eat that thing, and become a 3/4.
So if you're expecting a lot of Shaman, it does seem to make somewhat reasonable sense to have that Hungry Crab in there. It's not something I'd massively considered for the Shaman mirror, but when you put it like that, it does start to make sense. Fills the curve, yeah.
Yeah, Aggro Shaman as well. Coin Underbelly Angler that is not something you want to see with this deck. You have almost 0 ways to take care of it.
Right.
And speaking of that,
yeah, Pavel's side, he does have that single copy of Earthshock and a Haunting Visions, but this is a much more aggressive version of the deck, similar to what we saw from various players last week. And this is pretty much the build that we saw with that single copy of Haunting Visions, of course the double Doomhammer deck, and we've talked about the legacy of double Doomhammer in Aggro Shaman for the longest time. It's one of Admirable's favorite topics. I know he loves seeing Doomhammer be back in the metagame.
Oh yeah. I think this is the exact list that Viper brought last week.
It looks very much like it, yeah.
Haunting Visions. We saw Viper get some work done with this deck too. It is a very powerful machine that can get some work done, a la the power generated by Thunderhead. Not Thundra Rhino.
Thunderhead. Yeah.
So there you can see, protected on warrior both sides. That's what I ended up missing there.
Yeah, and with the addition of the fact that Pavel's playing Aggro Shaman, the fact that there's a couple of extra early Murlocs in there as well, then start to make this this Hungry Crab tech from Seiko just even more attractive option. Starting to become more and more of a fan of it the more I look.
Yeah. Protected warrior on both sides. Pavel's got Bomb Warrior, the same as he had brought last week, and Seiko with Control Warrior. So Warrior seems to be like a linchpin of these lot of lineups where you're like, I just need a way to fight aggro decks. I have to have this. So when your opponent shows up with aggro, it feels like such a natural thing to protect in your lineup.
Yeah, it's what I mentioned, early on, is where I don't know how much changing Dr. Boom from 7 to 9 really changes the dynamic of how effective Control Warrior is against aggro. Because a lot of the time, Dr. Boom Mad Genius isn't really the card that beats aggro. It's the fact that they can afford to play 4 1-drops, 2 Dynamatics, a bunch of Warpaths, removal, 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 removal. Dr. Boom, because you can build your deck like that, you do beat aggro very consistently, and then Dr. Boom is just your go-to late-game card for coming down and ending the situation. I don't think that dynamic changes enormously just because Dr. Boom Mad Genius got more expensive.
It's a fair point.
What to do? There's little time.
Yeah, Coin Angler not looking so good here. I think in Pavel's spot, he's going to tend to go with it. Playing mostly to A, his curve, but then B, the potential that he draws a Murloc. I think if he draws a Murloc here, he's in pretty fantastic shape. Seiko saying pretty underwhelming. And that's a Murloc. Oh, that's a Murloc.
Second one.
Ooh, I'm going to talk about how much I hate this card.
I mean,
a lot today.
I was about to get right there before you. I know you're personally not a big fan of the former champ in the list either, which I'm totally fine with. But for me, Volpera Scoundrel is a step too far. I think that is way too slow. I think you can do much, much more effective things in that mana slot, just in terms of just playing bigger stats, let alone having more effective battle cries.
Yeah. I mean, this game I didn't want to talk about it because he just, I mean, look at what he's up against. This was about one of the best outcomes I think Pavel could have seen.
Yeah.
Off the back of this situation.
Well, I mean, he's playing one Mind Control tech in his deck, so that Volpera Scoundrel could have been a second copy of Mind Control tech, which would have had an impact in this exact board state.
Yep.
All right. Crab's been found.
That's a big swing. That actually might be enough for Seiko to get into this. The thing he's got to fight off mostly at this point is the tempo onslaught from Pavel. So if he can fend that off in the next 2 turns and then find a way to protect himself, I think he's got a shot.
Yeah, the big problem is that there's kind of 3 must-kill targets that turn.
Yeah.
He had to kill the 2 underbelly anglers. One of the underbelly anglers was poisonous as well, which means it absolutely had to die. But then because those were the 2 priority targets, he's then left with the Murloc Tidecaller still being alive on Pavel's side, which can represent an enormous amount of damage.
Pretty unspectacular turn here from Pavel's side, though.
Yep.
I wonder.
You know, I was thinking like a pair of Earthen Mites. Suit up that Tidecaller and get to work. Leads into Doomhammer.
Does lead into Doomhammer. Ends up with 6 health on the Tidecaller, which is, yeah, pretty well protected. Seiko did overload on the previous turn as well. This happens. Does that mean Pavel's making the trade and representing board again?
Well, those are the 2 options, right? It's play for board or play for damage. Nature of my aggro rogue hand with Doomhammer and Electra in it is I wanted to play for damage.
The nature of you being Nathan That's Admirable Zamora is that you wanted to play for damage.
Oh, yeah. You know, sometimes board means damage, though.
It does, yeah.
In this case, the Earthen Mites were board and damage, though. You know, there's punishes on the other side, is the thing he's got to think about. Natural copy of Earthshock, that's included in Seiko's deck. But that's about it. For Seiko, I think if he can get to Giggling Inventor with, you know, a semblance of life total,
What to do?
he's still got a chance. Something to note for Pavel, too, is the Scargill on board meant that he gets to generate more tempo next turn, perhaps. So he gets to lead, like, into the Murloc Tasty Fin +2 Earthen Mites, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable way of looking at it. I think if you do set out your stall to go just outright damage against Quest Shaman, you can occasionally get bitten by just, you know, doubled up life drinkers, just like losing the race.
Yeah. Copy of
like 6
in Seiko's deck as well.
Yeah, sure. But like 6 damage, 6 healing, if you set up race situations, which if you're going to start ignoring board and pushing damage with Doomhammer, you're basically always signifying a race. 6 damage, 6 healing is about the best race tool that is available in Hearthstone right now.
Holy Light and Leroy in the same card.
Yeah.
Woo! You're like, I need to be aggro and deal damage. By the way, I need to stop damage. Just like literally perfect card.
Yeah, Pavel does get the payoff for that Scargill on the previous turn. Starts to make more and more sense the more you look at it.
Yeah, you got to start using the Earthen Mites here.
Just turn them into damage while you still have a board. You just don't want to leave them stranded in your hand at the end of the game. You're suddenly staring down thinking, I'm like 2 damage off here. You've got 2 Earthen Mites stuck in your hand. Just turn the weird cards into damage as soon as you can.
Seiko just cannot protect himself this turn.
Nope. Giggling Inventor is going to start putting in a huge amount of work, though.
I mean,
But if he can't deal with the board state, it's not going to be good enough.
he's got Plague of Murlocs.
I think so. I think it's the only option you have.
Ooh.
I mean, on average, you do remove a decent amount of damage from the board. It is dangerous because even you can roll small Murlocs, but because Murlocs are so inherently synergistic, like, you know, one of the smallest things you can roll adds +1 attack to every other Murloc on the board.
Yeah.
So you can end up still leaving a huge amount of damage left over. But I think it's below 12 almost always.
Yeah. It's just the Murlocs. Honestly, like I figured this out as I was playing a lot of Plague of Murlocs. They're just chunky. There's a lot of chunky Murlocs in there.
Little time.
Yep, Grimscale Oracle. You think that's one of the ones you want? They can still represent enormous damage. 7 still remaining.
Wow.
14 total this turn? No, wait.
If you Electra, Rockbiter, that's 6 more, and then 3 more from Lightning Bolt. So
yep.
Pavel's literally 1 damage off lethal this turn. So that means Doomhammer. Chip the extra damage. That pushes Seiko down to 6, and Giggling Inventor's not enough. Needed the semblance of life total. Very close, though. And Seiko's mine, he's sometimes good enough here. Well, we can see the damage from Pavel, Aggro Shaman getting it done.
The second time in as many weeks, we're seeing an Electra potentially come in clutch as well. Just forcing through those extra points of damage when the big taunt walls come down. When Tomb Warden is available in the meta as a big taunt wall. Starts to make sense. Probably not planning to be encountering too many Giggling Inventors this week was Pavel, but he still has the dream set up. He gives a little smirk as he gets over the line with perfect damage. Up to a very, very good start. It was looking like his hand was going to be a little bit slow, but then with the Coin Underbelly Angler, he then picked up the perfect card off the top to just start snowballing Murlocs. And Seiko on his side, I think partly due to his build of the deck, does have some of these kind of weird, slightly slow, clunky cards like Bulpera Scoundrel in there. But again, he does have the Hungry Crab in his deck, which he put in for exactly situations like that. If he'd have had that on turn 1 or turn 2 earlier in the game, it would have been a very, very different story. As it was, he picked it up on a turn where, yes, it was good, but there was 3 high-priority targets to take care of, and the Hungry Crab could only take care of 1.
Yeah, and so that, to me, is the thing to look at for Aggro Shaman, is that very much as we saw from Viper, I think, too, sometimes you have to throw caution to the wind and put yourself at risk, where you're like, if I have a string of weak draws here, things could get out of control. But you know, the Coin Underbelly Angler doesn't just represent drawing a Murloc, it represents drawing an Earthen Might. It represents perhaps the Lickum coming down and finding an overload tool to fight for board super hard. Like, the Coin Underbelly Angler, absolutely the right call in that situation, even with no in-hand synergy for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing you need to have experience with aggro decks, is that aggro decks are generally built in a way where their curve is the most consistent of any type of deck in Hearthstone. So sometimes you do get to play to just, you know, I have a 30% chance to top deck a card that really pays me off hard on this, because those payoffs come a lot more often with aggro because they are built to draw cards in those kind of sequences that put things together and get you big advantages.
Early game matters a lot, so mulligan aggressively and then find the right payoffs as early as you can. Try to take the risks early. Snowball that game.
Yep.
So Pavel out to a 1-0 lead. We got to go to break. When we come back, Seiko's going to be looking to tie things up. Quest Shaman and Quest Druid in his lineup. We'll find out how they're paying off this week. They're some of the most popular in Grandmasters.
My name is Rafael Pelzer. I go by Bunny Hopper in Hearthstone. I've always been a competitive kid. There's like always a little bit more to the game, right? You get tired of just playing at a certain level and you're like, you always just want a little bit more. You hit legend, you hit high legend, you hit rank 1 and you're like, let's go to the next level. Yeah, it means a lot to me to be in the Grandmasters program because it feels really great to be recognized, especially last year was going really well for me. I think what I look forward to the most in Grandmasters is just have this weekly schedule of competition that every week you can iterate your lineup. Every week you have another match against another good player instead of having these dry periods where you don't play any matches, any best of 5s, best of 3s. So my personal goals is firstly do well in Grandmasters, and secondly is I'm still trying to find a good job in chemical industry.
Is there some sort of X factor that sets you apart from everyone else?
I mean, I have a doctor, haha.
My name is Christos Sakopoulos. My username comes from when I was a kid. I used to go to like an internet cafe with my friends to play like, I remember WoW and stuff like that. And I just had to make a character one day and one of my friends said, your plays are phenomenal, so you can just put the name Phenomenal there. And I just did it and then it just stuck. The thing that's unique about my playstyle, I feel, is that I sometimes think about stupid plays that other people would never even consider, and I try to get something out of it. I think people don't pay attention to details like trading or going face, I really pay attention to those things because I think it's super important. Like even one bad trade can cost you the game a lot of times. My favorite memory was definitely when I won my first Hearthstone tournament last year in HCT Orange County. And doing that just gave me so much more confidence and made me feel like I was free again. I'd say being in Grandmasters means that I've made it to the top players of Europe, which has always been my goal. So yeah, I'm looking forward to start competing again.
Week 2 Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region. I'm Nathan. That's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon, Sottle Welch, and Sottle. Pavel's out to a 1-0 lead in this one. And he secured a win with Aggro Shaman in very quick fashion, as that deck can tend to do.
Yes, very interesting juxtaposition to the series that we had previously with Yala, where of course Yala's nature is just to play very slowly, but they had much slower decks involved as well. This one was just kind of a blowout game 1, where Pavel got on board early. Seiko did not have the answers with his much slower version of Shaman. He's playing the Quest Shaman up against Aggro Shaman. And now it sounds like Pavel is going to try and keep that momentum going. He's going for a win with another pretty quick deck right off the bat.
Yeah, Tempo Rogue is what he's going to be going with. We can take a look at that before we jump into our next game here. He's gone with the Chef Nomi as the end game. You know, you've talked a lot about having one big synergy card post Myra's, and yes. I think Zephyrus is the one that a lot of players tend to favor right now. But you know, given Season 1 for Pavel, I think you gotta give Chef Nomi credit.
It's true. If he does want to give the nod back to his Season 1 lore of bringing Chef Nomi Priest, but even Pavel himself has kind of started memeing on the Chef Nomi pick earlier. I mentioned he tweeted, "Isn't it interesting that both players who ended up 4 and 10 were the players who brought Nomi Priest," referring to himself and Tice to Season 1. So I think he acknowledges that was probably a mistake at the time that he did it. But Chef Nomi in this deck does kind of have a lot of validity to it. I think it's a very powerful card when you have double Shadow Step in your deck, for example. If you are just planning on encountering warriors and potentially having something to fight back against them, I think that makes a lot of sense to have Nomi in there instead of the Zephyrus. I think in that particular matchup, Nomi plus Shadow Step is probably more effective than you know, Zephyrus. Even if you're going to Shadow Step that afterwards, I think I'd rather have 3 Nomi boards than like 3 Tyrians or whatever else you're going to get from those Shadow Steps. So it does make sense. There is arguments. It's just personally for me, against the range of matchups, I'd prefer to have Zephyrus. But when you build a lineup for a tournament like this, you have certain classes in mind that you're expecting. You have certain classes that you intend to ban, and that always tempers which tech choices, as well as, of course, personal biases towards each and every card.
Nobody has personal biases.
Every person.
No, that's silly. Play styles, yeah, right, Sottle. Much better opening hand for Seiko in this one. Actual 2-cost cards. I want to talk about the Nomi and how important I feel like it could be in this matchup. Where I think a lot of times what the matchup is boiling down to is the resource trades that go back and forth. And eventually Seiko ends up in a position where if he's not under threat of a peeping pile of burst damage, he's going to get there. And Chef Nomi really breaks that rule. There's not really a card in Quest Shaman that can battle cry fight against that. You either have to deliver a killing blow, or you're kind of done. Like Mind Control Tech can steal away, up to 4 of those minions. Even if that was the case, you're still looking at 18 damage from Chef Nomi pouring in.
I wonder.
Yeah, you can create some weird custom AoEs with this deck.
Little time.
But like 4 to 5 is kind of the max range of AoE you can do. I'm thinking of like Bog Slosher in combination with Sandstorm Elemental when you're doubling your battle cries.
Yeah.
You can, playing Sandstorm twice with a Bog Slosher costs you 7, so you can fit in the double battle cry alongside that and get you 4 AoE.
There's a board clear for you. So you play a Sandstorm Elemental, you play another Sandstorm Elemental, you Bog Slosher a Sandstorm Elemental to play that as well, you preserve the coin for the end of the game, and you coin the Shutterwalk.
Got him!
Take that, Chef Nomi.
Yeah.
You can only potentially hit on turn 7.
But the more realistic way to go about that, like if you're in a world where you're planning to have to kill Chef Nomi boards, is you want to be doubling up on Ethereal Lackeys and such effects and looking for Earthquakes.
Oh yeah. Earthquake is so much more of a powerful card than I thought it was. Like, the first time I read this card, I was like, 7 mana is a lot. And then like I just kept getting it from Ethereal Lackeys, and I was like, this card's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Eventually I just put it in my deck. Notice that Seiko went with the Evil Totem on turn 1 to pressure Pavel to have a backstab early on.
Yep.
That does a number of things too. Not only does, if you see the backstab, you're like, it's not so good for you. But it does take away SI7 agent options on the next turn.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you can kind of skip quest on 1 and get that big investment of multiple lackeys coming off your Evil Totem, it very, very quickly pays itself back.
Evil Totem providing lackey, which provides a place location, 2 battle cries activated for Evil Totem. 2 wasps in hand for Seiko. And having all the lackey generation in this game, it looks like he's going to have some pretty strong options to get in there.
Well, one of those cards is in your deck.
I would argue it shouldn't be, but that's just me.
Strictly worse than Youthful Brewmaster, I believe you said to me yesterday.
And I'm going to keep saying that.
Okay.
Whole benefit of that card is it returns a battle cry.
I wasn't sure if that was going to be another situation where you claim I misquoted you. Despite
No.
reporting accurately.
Yeah, I said strictly worse.
Yeah.
This is one of the decks that I will eventually be very prideful about because I have just so many games on it. Like, when I remember I was doing the card review with Gallon, I was like, is it really good? I was like, I could see this being like a niche deck, and Gallon was preaching about how good he thought it was.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I started playing it, and I was like, wow, this deck is just cool. Like, it's just so much fun to play. There's so many things you can do. I quickly found out that clogging my hand with mana was really tough. Kill a thing and still have my thing. That's one of my favorite things.
Would have been a very different song if you wrote it, huh?
Do a thing and then do a thing. Those are some of my favorite things.
How much is this worth to you?
It makes just about as much sense as schnitzel with noodles, which is not a thing, by the way. No one eats schnitzel and noodles. That's purely for the rhyme scheme. I'm on to you.
Plague of Murloc's Hungry Crab!
Yeah.
You get to eat the Edwin that way!
I mean, I guess that's technically true.
Whoa! And the
It
Edwin
ended up
becomes a
being
big
the
one!
biggest one!
Yes!
That was only a 33% chance that ridiculous way you chose to describe it came to fruition, and it worked. How are you this lucky?
Boston drew the Myras in the last game too.
Yeah.
It's just a caster thing.
Yeah.
If I could cast tournaments while I was also playing the tournament, I'd probably win them. I call that SI7 agent he drew as well. You remember that?
You're just the luckiest man I know.
It's just weird. the most irrelevantly luckiest person.
Yes.
That's my superpower.
Yeah.
Pavel's superpower is he is hammering away at this board state, but Seiko is still with ways to fight back. I'm looking at that Mogu Flesh Shaper this turn.
I think Seiko is too.
Wow. That is a very strong pickup as well.
Of course, one of the cards that Seiko has kind of omitted from his deck in order to fit like the Earthshock, the Hungry Crab, all that kind of stuff in there are the Evolves that we were talking about at the start of the day.
Mutate.
That can really, the Mutate. The Evolve effect that comes from the card Mutate is clearly what I was going to say if you'd have let me finish.
I apologize. I'm sorry. That was way too aggressive.
I've totally lost the train of my thought now. Yeah, so obviously in combination with Mogu Flesh Shaper would be a massive board swing in this kind of position. But sometimes it's just good enough as a 0-mana rush guy.
Couldn't fit it in this turn because your thing killed a thing. That wasn't my favorite thing. I'm looking at this Wasteland Assassin. I want to do my mana better. So I'm going with the purple this turn.
Yeah, it looks like 4+3 this turn and then 5+3 on the turn after.
Upgrade. No Waggle picks in Pavel's deck? No, it's Seiko's deck. There's no Waggle picks. He's playing the Spirit of the Shark version.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking Waggle pick. I'm with the upgrade. That's a lot of damage.
So many options.
Yeah, I think so too. I think because you have a reasonably planned out curve for the coming turns. Most justified just slipping another cheap card in there. Just picking out a handful of 1-drops with the lackeys and the upgrade. Feels the most flexible with the curve that you've committed to.
Wow, that ended up being like a really smart trade. I started to see it at the start, and I was like, what in the world? Protects the 4/3.
Yeah. Again, this is not outright aggression from Pavel's deck. As we were talking about before, was it during Boston's game where he was trying to make the decision to trade into the Twilight Drake or whether to ship damage would face and how to trade into the Twilight Drake. It's quite a difficult deck to play when you're playing this kind of middle ground Burgle package tempo rogue because it does do a lot of things reasonably well, but you have to kind of decide on your own which line to commit to, whereas a more outright aggressive version, you kind of know what the plan is all the time. You make whatever trade or push whatever damage maximizes the most damage over time, and that is just kind of a simple game plan. Very, very hard to execute, but simple in essence.
There's little time.
Seeing my first Bog Slosher benefit ever. It's the first time I've ever seen this actually just be a benefit. Of course it comes from Seiko.
Sure it is,
player
buddy.
Who just always does the opposite of what I think they're going to do and is always right.
I mean,
he's always right. And now I'm questioning everything I know.
when you said it, it did sound like one of the more outlandish things I'd ever heard you say. And I've heard you say some very outlandish things.
No. What? No.
But I personally am willing to pay 1 extra for my Youthful Brewmaster if it turns my 1/1 into a 5/5.
I want my mana efficiency. I've thought about it.
He thought long and hard.
Yeah. I guess, you know, we are in a very different meta, I suppose. Like, most of my Quest Shaman play has come, you know, obviously before the balance patch.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a couple days. And you needed to be able to burn out Mage in those situations.
Are so
That changes a lot of that. You know, being able to turn 10, like, every lackey represented 12 damage from hand if you had Brewmaster Wasp, that was an important measure. I don't think that's actually important anymore. Mage feels like it's going to be a rarity.
It's, yeah, less important. Of course, it will still encounter situations where it's going to be relevant, yeah.
You belong to the bomb now.
So Seiko setting up for the Shutter Walk here.
Yep.
Yeah, just going in as hard as he can.
Double time and double pay.
Sort of weird looking a lot with this Shaman deck. You end up trading a ton. A lot of your damage kind of comes residually over time.
Yep.
Just your battle cries double up, you do a ton of stuff, and eventually you look down at one turn and you go, oh, I have a ton of damage.
Yes. Generally the idea being the more you trade, the more you play for value, the more you pick up 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s with the double battle cries and so on, the longer the game extends. And yeah, you just draw a couple of life drinkers, you play a couple of life drinkers, and you play Shutterwalk at the end of the game. Like, that usually just adds up to death for your opponent.
I'm having a lot of epiphanies this game. I realize that's why I enjoy this deck so much. It makes me trade a lot, and that's something I usually just don't do.
You just like trying new things.
So many options.
I mean, it's been like 5 years of Hearthstone. I do not trade that much. This deck, I trade all the time. I see why people do it now. Oh my gosh.
I thought you were going to say, it's been like 5 years since I made my last trade.
Choose soon.
Double Abyss, the only remaining cards for Pavel, which kind of, talking about it a lot, if you're looking at signals from your deck, that's about as good as they get, that you have to just giddy up and start shipping some damage.
I was wondering if there was any chance for lethal here. I don't think that there is. The only damage battle cries, just the one copy of Life Drinker.
I wonder.
Well, he has the weaponized Wasp, right? And he does control a lackey right now.
Yeah, that's not pointed.
Yeah. But it can choose to cooperate, if it would like to.
Well, let's find out.
My jaws that bind. My
Let's
claws.
Smoke the Flesh Shaper perhaps back in hand. 2 copies of Bog Slosher in the board right now.
Yeah, it does suddenly look like he's got his Flesh Shaper back.
I forgot how glorious.
Mortals are so squishy.
Ah, the intended purpose of Shutterwalk. A big
Oh!
turn instead of... Oh! Was that in the game?
That's lethal. That is lethal.
Whoa!
That is 18.
Look at the smile on Pavel's face! He's got that, like, sneaky lethal smile again.
Old Pavel's back,
Old
baby.
Pavel's back! 3-0!
Shows up, waits like an hour and a half for the first series to be done. He's waiting on standby, he's on deck. He's like, all right, let me show you guys how this is done. Walks up, 2-0, 15 minutes. All right, I'm off. See you guys tomorrow.
It's like last week. He couldn't tell us what he was up to, and now he's got places to be.
Yeah.
You can see he's back at home.
He's
That lovely
got an
backdrop.
active volcano to hollow out, so he can build an evil lair in it. I'm telling you, that's what's happening.
I forgot that we theorized he's an evil genius building
He
a
is.
henchman lair.
It's not a theory. He is actually an evil genius. Whether he chooses to act on those urges or not is another issue, but he is definitely an evil genius.
Wow, getting it done. Shaman and Rogue, 2 very aggressive games. The aggro decks, I think, are very I was going to say under-respected. That's not the term for it. They're very disrespected right now, I feel like. You know, we're seeing Quest Druid, like, across the board everywhere. People talking about Warrior getting, like, just so much weaker. I'm like, Control Warrior is still a very strong deck. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Europe obviously thought that was the case. I'm talking about generalized opinions across the board.
I do think there was a lot of merit to aggro this week because, like you said, just like surface level 1, people are going to bring Druid because that seems to be the hot new stuff now after the patch. So you beat them up with minions, you develop early, you hit them. But then secondly, if you start to like go one step further, you're like, well, what are people going to bring to beat Druid? You start looking at like Priest, for example, which is now slowed down because of how much slower Extra Arm's in. playing a bunch of minions and hitting Priest really hard early also works too. So the Zoos, the aggro shamans, the rogues, I think that is a pretty sensible decision from the players that have brought those this week.
Indeed. And so now we got a Ridders interview. Pavel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Whew, old Pavel's back. 3-0 now in Grandmasters. This is night and day from Season 1.
Yeah, good triumph over evil.
Wait, you're claiming you're playing good in this story?
Oh, of course. I'm playing honorable, aggressive face decks against evil control shaman with life drinkers and stuff, and tones.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I totally forgot about how honorable your decks were. I apologize. You are, of course, a massive force for good. Thank you, Lord Pavel, for bringing aggro back into our world.
Yes, you should apologize.
Yeah, I do, unequivocally.
All right. Well, I'm not going to apologize. I'm going to ask you about your prep this week because I want to know about the balance patch overall and how it affected you in this one. What decks did you find that were extremely powerful? And then furthermore, was there anything that you wanted to bring that you couldn't quite bring this week?
Well, I just came back home 2 days ago, so I had only 1 day to prepare, and I wasn't sure what to bring, but I saw that even after nerfs, Warrior is still one of the best decks, and I decided to pick Bomb Warrior in particular because it's good against Control Warrior and against Paladin. And then I picked Aggro Shaman because I think it's good against Rogue, against West Shaman and some other decks. I also was thinking about targeting Quest Druid, but then in that case they can just not play Quest Druid. So I just decided to play decks that I'm comfortable with.
How much
Since
harder?
I didn't have much time to.
Sorry, how much harder does that make preparation in general? Like, obviously, in old school Conquest, targeting one deck was like the go-to thing. But the fact that if you target one deck, they just don't have to play it in the series, like, does that change lineup construction a lot?
It does change lineup construction. I wouldn't say it's harder, it's just different. I think it's easier to build a lineup in best of 3, and especially in that format, because that format allows you to have one bad deck that you can just not play if it turns out that the deck isn't good.
And so now I want to talk about just overall kind of contrasting Season 1 to Season 2 now. You know, you started out 3-0 here, and we've heard your media piece over and over again where you talk about that you want to show there's no player that's better than you. Is that really like part of the season going into this one? You know, like obviously we don't want to see players relegated, but you know, it's part of what's at stake here. Are you still having that thirst to prove that you want to be one of the best in the world?
No, I don't feel like I have to prove to someone something. There's always going to be people who's going to say that it's all because of RNG, no matter how many good results I will get. I think that I already proven more than enough that I'm a good player. And yeah, I still think that there's no better player than me.
Anything else?
Love that confidence. That's about all I got to add.
All right. Well, Pavel, I say ignore the naysayers because they don't get it anyway. But congratulations on your start here in Grandmasters. 3-0 is this is the Pavel that we expected to see. So looking forward to seeing you play this week as well.
Thank you.
I kind of like his sentiment. He's like, there's always going to be people who question it. I've proved enough. Just going to compete.
Yeah, I mean, what really else do you have to prove? Like, if someone questions whether you're a good player or not, you can wave a giant world championship trophy in their face. Like, jog on, friend.
You're like,
yeah, the ultimate scoreboard.
like it's kind of heavy. I'm going to put it back down now.
Yeah. Have I made my point yet? My arms are getting tired. Okay, there we go.
That's our second match in the book. Pavel improves to a 3-0 score in a very quick fashion as well.